Well, I was initially just super excited about the GULAG Archipelago because I think, like a lot of college students, and probably those who've recently graduated from college, I'm very used to that hamster wheel cycle of I'm reading to get an assignment done, I'm reading to get an assignment done, I'm writing an essay, I'm taking a test. And it's draining, it's exhausting, and I never really feel like I'm able to absorb a book, think about it, and reflect on it without thinking, what am I going to write for my essay in the back of my mind the entire time? That's why I was initially drawn to the Hertog Foundation, this humanities series. And I study comparative political science. I've recently worked in sort of an international field with an NGO at the UN last summer, and I was really excited to try and understand really the origins of, another nation that has been, our rivals for decades and decades. And I think it's really easy for people to say it's, Russia's Russia. They've always been that way. But for me, it sort of stems from my love for learning about other languages and learning about other cultures. I always think it's more complicated than that. It's not just people are revisionist because they are power hungry. It has to do with some deep cultural legacy, and I really wanted to take this class to just dive into that whole topic, try to understand where is the Russia that we deal with today, where does it come from? Yeah, the experience of actually being in the class was so much fun. It was a little tricky for me because I'm 6 hours ahead, so I was juggling really crazy time zones, but I would not ever have dropped it. Like, even though I was concerned going in, I am so glad I stuck with it. Every class session I looked forward to so much, and I'd really not had that experience yet, in college at least, of having read a book and being left every time I finished our section thinking about it, thinking about like what I was reading. I mean, partially it's because I was given the liberty to do so, and we were inspired to do so. Professor Taylor was awesome in just giving us great sort of angles to follow, encouraging discussion. But I really just wanted to understand this book, just to understand it, more than just, oh, I'm understanding the Soviet Union. It seemed to contain so many different facets and so much wisdom about life. I don't know, I was left really considering why I do the things I do. It's not like it led me to some profound revelation, but it made me start to think in a way I haven't really started to think about the purpose of where I'm on, this journey, this path, which is still very young, still very early on. What was really striking for me was we had a section that Solzhenitsyn talks about. It's a chapter called Ascent, and I think it's from The Soul and Barbed Wire. I think that's the section, but don't quote me on that. But it really dealt a lot with finding meaning and finding purpose in even the worst of situations, and just getting to the very crux of what it means to be human, for what our purpose is, to ascend. And for Solzhenitsyn, that takes the place of just entirely, almost my interpretation, and other people might have different ones, was just letting go, trusting in a higher power, and putting aside human suffering for spiritual growth and enlightenment, as well as mental. And for me, that was really striking, just that it could be that simple, that people are left with just this really one commandment, I guess, in the end, to just let things go and just allow themselves to understand and learn, to put aside suffering. And not that I think many of us live in that sort of a situation where we have to forget about torture, but it made me really think about why. It's a question I'm still thinking about it, to be honest. And it's been a couple of weeks, because it's not something I think you really learn until you really, I think it's a learning that and an understanding that changes as time goes on, and as one is in different phases of their lives. But it made me really think about, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Why am I abroad? Why am I trying to learn more? How am I going to figure out what's next? Because I don't really know what's next. I'm still pretty unsure about what my next steps are. And it made me reconsider that even if there's a lot of uncertainty, as long as I think I'm growing and learning and allowing myself to be receptive to just this growth in spiritual, mental, whatever sense, then I think I'm at least on the right path. Well, it's not a fully like, you can tell it's not a fully fledged idea. I think it's a really an idea that, like I said, I think it never really leaves you, and I think it's probably a thought that I'll be having, or in some other form, at least along these lines, when I'm 30, 40, 70, 80, like just trying to reevaluate how have I ascended, where am I going? And I think Solzhenitsyn does an amazing job of showing how that question never leaves us, even when it's the abject worst situation you could ever be in. Well, my first advice would always be, and this is how I sort of go about it, is just throw your hat in the ring. It's not an arduous, and it's not going to take you weeks to do the application. It's not nothing, but it's not so bad that I wouldn't say I would say try, just to see. Because if you don't get in, then it's not even a decision. But you also might get into a class that's really exciting. For me, I'd say that I'm sort of a night owl, so I knew I could make it work. I do have 8 a.m.s, so I would finish the seminar at 2 a.m., and then I'd have to, get up at like 7 a.m. for my 8 a.m. class. So it definitely is tiring, but if you really love incredible books, great conversations, and I knew that this is something I really wanted to do. I knew this wasn't an experience I'd get in my normal university schedule, and also I knew that once I returned to campus, I would be too busy for this, and for me it was just worth it. Now, for someone who's maybe 12 hours ahead, it might be a little tricky, but I would say that it truly is worth it just to see if you get it, and then reevaluate. If you're going abroad and you're applying before you go abroad, your schedule might allow it. You can always be flexible. You can talk with your instructor, and they were pretty understanding. For instance, when I was writing my reflection paper the first time with time zones, my Professor Taylor was really accommodating, and it never hurts to try.